Dear Mary, Pulitzer Prize-winning author and historian Barbara Tuchman once said, "Books are the carriers of civilization. Without books, history is silent, literature dumb, science crippled, thought and speculation at a standstill. Literature is affected by everything around it, and in turn affects what surrounds it. The way people write and their subject material has changed due to the way the world changes. Writings and books play an important role in history. The art of war was and still is a great influence on military strategy. Common sense inspired the American Revolution. The jungle caused a change in sanitary food laws. The women's rights movement was sparked by the feminine mystique, and the origin of species led to the theory of evolution. Writers take inspiration from their predecessors and their surroundings, and as eras change, literature changes. Some of the earliest sources of literature are Greek myths, and as such, they serve as a foundation for all literature to follow. Greek myths came out of the classical era, which occurred between 480 and 223 BC. One of the ways these were told were through epic poems. These were long narratives about their heroes and adventure, Homer and Virgil. Greek playwrights would compete against each other at festivals. They would present 4 plays, a trilogy of tragedies, and then a satyr, a comedy, to liven things up. Not that things weren't already lively, because these festivals were festivals of Dionysus, the god of wine and of insanity. In order to understand where or why the Greeks wrote what they did, we have to understand their lifestyles. Life in ancient Greece varied from city-state to city-state.
This is Sparta!
Child-rearing methods were much stricter than those of Athens. By the age of 7, Spartan boys were learning how to wage war, and they were in the army until age 60. If they lived that long. In Athens, men exercised every day and then they would bathe. Unlike Spartans, who believed bathing too much would lead to their men growing soft from overindulgence. There was a rigid social structure starting with slaves and medics, or immigrants, at the bottom. They were used for hard, laborious work, and neither of them could vote or marry an Athenian citizen. The difference between the two groups was medics had to pay taxes and serve in the military, while slaves were treated as property. Women did not have any rights. They were not even allowed out of their houses, except on special occasions in Athens. In Sparta, they had much more power because their husbands would be constantly at war, so they were the ones who managed the property and could even vote at the age of 30. Greek literature often encouraged the citizens to behave in a way that fit the expectation of their situation or culture. Spartans would tell more stories about Ares, the god of war, and Athenians would recognize their patron goddess, Athena, goddess of wisdom and battle strategy. All in all, how they lived influenced the stories they told. One such story is the Odyssey, which tells the heroic tale of Odysseus, a soldier returning home from the war told by Homer's Iliad. As Odysseus tries to get back to his wife, Penelope, and his son, Telemachus, many dangers delay his arrival, including lovesick nymphs holding him captive, a giant cyclops, a witch siren singing him to his death, and a trip to Hades. When he finally gets to Ithaca, he finds his home overrun by rowdy men who want to marry Penelope, kill Telemachus, and take control of Odysseus' possessions. Odysseus and his son massacre all of the suitors, and then Odysseus thinks Penelope was unfaithful while he was at war, so he plans to kill her if she fails his test. She, in turn, tests him to ensure that it is truly her husband. Not only is it a fantastic adventure story, but the themes and messages run deeper than the words. The Odyssey holds timeless themes such as brain versus brawn, hubris, and resisting temptation. Odysseus differed from Achilles, the ferocious hero in the Iliad, in that he was brilliant. So brilliant, in fact, he earned the attention of the goddess of wisdom herself, Athena. When Odysseus and his crew were held captive by Polyphemus the Cyclops, he introduced himself as No Man. So when he stabbed his eye out, Polyphemus screamed, "No man is hurting me." No other Cyclopses came to help him because they thought no one was hurting him. Odysseus, like all heroes, had a fatal flaw, hubris. He was too prideful. After he defeated Polyphemus, he couldn't stand to think that no man would get the credit. So he yelled back to Polyphemus his true name, which resulted in half of his crew being killed. Temptation crossed Odysseus' path more than once. The Sirens were creatures that would sing from the depths of the sea. They would sing men's deepest desires, and men would throw themselves into the sea. There were also many beautiful women, such as Calypso, the nymph that held him captive because she fell in love with him, and Circe, the witch he had to leave to go home to his faithful wife, who also had to resist to the temptation of the suitors and stay true to her husband. Themes like the dangers of pride and temptation and the importance of intelligence were important to the Greeks because they wanted to live their lives without giving into temptation and being intelligent. And those themes are present not only in Greek myths, but in much literature to come. Greeks did not just write in poetry. They also wrote in plays like the Oedipus trilogy. Many people view Oedipus' story as disgusting and are horrified that he would kill his own father and marry his mother, which were just as horrendous crimes now as they were back then. But others argues that Oedipus Rex is a tragedy of a man who could not escape his own fate. It was a common theme of Greek literature to talk about fate. Mythology even personifies it in the Fates, 3 old ladies who knit giant blue socks. Like Oedipus, many Greeks struggled with whether or not they were in control of their own fate. Telling people that they weren't in control of their own fate was very beneficial for their rigid social structure. If you believed that you had no choice but to resign to your own fate, and you were a slave, then you weren't going to try to be like, hey, it's not really fair that you own me, right? Because I'm a human too, so you should stop doing that. So, these myths helped keep their society together. Sincerely, Sophistication.